we should be going.
Yep, we can see that.
Cool, great. Start on the right slide, that'd help. So good to go?
Yep, good to go.
Great. So again, thanks for giving us the opportunity to kind of half meet everyone today and share some of the things we've been doing. So as I mentioned, we're CPL Learning is the combined entity of CPL Trading, formerly in CPL Online, so is our kind of blended version of the business, and we rebranded just before lockdown last year. As I say, recently acquired by Access Group just last week as well. What I'm going to talk through today is some of the kind of themes and things that we've seen from some of the research that we've done with our friends at CGA over the past year or so, about kind of how we evolve the way we support our teams, by understanding what team members across the industry are interested in, challenged by, etc. So this is something that we set up called Hospitality Professionals. So it's a panel of team members from across hospitality at all levels, and we talk to them about key issues and topics across the year. So the key elements are around optimism and concerns and career expectations, challenges people are facing. And, you know, we wanted to do this pre-lockdown, and the key aim there was to look at people's perceptions of hospitality as a career, and that's a real kind of key driving factor of this, is we want to try and, you know, support the industry with our work alongside UK Hospitality and other organisations to show that actually hospitality can be a great career. But the reality is, I think it's a great career for a lot of people within a bit more of an echo chamber, and there's a lot of people who don't see it as a career for reasons that I think need challenging. So we wanted to use this as a kind of barometer for that, and also to hopefully support people's benchmarking in their own businesses as well. So perhaps as we go through some of the data, you could see where for your own businesses or for businesses that you work with, that this could be a useful benchmark for them to understand the effectiveness of their own programs and training and things as well. So to kind of kick off and get into the data itself, we've looked here at short-term and long-term optimism. So short-term in the grey and long-term in the blue. And you can see from August 20 last year, which is the first survey that we ran, you can see that, you know, optimism, be it short and long term, was not particularly great. You know, we'd hope it to be, you know, at least 2/3 or more in both elements, be short and long term optimistic. And more recently, to January at least, and the latest research is in field at the moment, we've seen an uptick as we get towards reopening. So naturally, you know, October we see talk of lockdowns, further lockdowns, and kind of the tiered system impacting confidence on the industry. I think most employees have been confident they'll be able to return to their previous jobs. So again, which is good. You know, not always the most vociferous of confidence, in terms of 31 being fairly confident, and others maybe a little bit more apathetic more broadly. But, you know, clearly there's been a confidence that people's jobs will still be there. I think as we kick on and look at people planning to return to their previous jobs, I think for any operators on the webinar today, they'll probably know, you know, from your own businesses, how challenging it's been to re-recruit and bring people back into work. I think the reality here from August to January is that we have seen a drop off of people planning to return to their previous job, albeit relatively small. But I think anecdotally we've seen this. I don't think this has necessarily been a true reflection of what's actually happened. I think, you know, from our clients, which, you know, from some of the biggest pub and restaurant operators down to single site operators, I think recruitment over the past few weeks for those lucky enough to reopen on outdoors only has been extremely challenging, be it people returning to Europe for obviously various other political reasons, or to go back to family, or because it's, you know, people have moved into retail, other sectors, or other businesses in hospitality. And I think this is one thing that I think hopefully will start to temper to some extent, but I think that the recruitment challenge will remain. I think job security off the back of that is a challenge for the industry generally, but I think we have to challenge it on a business level first. And I think this is where one of the first key themes for us comes in, and that's around communication. And, you know, we presented at one of the Morning Advertiser events last year, and I think one of the key themes there, kind of in the midst of lockdown, was the importance for open and honest communication to teams. And I think here, you know, you can see how the kind of movement of short-term and long-term job security has varied somewhat, and albeit people were somewhat more confident in October, with the irony of being that's when we were in more lockdown measures. You know, perhaps the government support was quite clear at that point that businesses would be able to manage. But I think now we're seeing things drop off to where they were at the end of last summer as well, which again I think is something that is something we have to address on a business by business basis. So I think this is possibly not natural for everybody to do. And I think irrespective of the business, you're a supplier, an operator, or irrespective of the size, and that typically open and honest conversation in this context means telling people how you're doing financially, which may not always be the most natural thing to do or the most willing thing that anybody wants to do. But I think the reality is if we don't share the information at the right time in the right way, be it financial in terms of the under kind of the foundational values of a business and whether it's going to survive, can survive, or thrive, is that there's an impact on confidence, and therefore people are more likely to move on if they're not confident in that business long term. So I think that's one thing where no news essentially is perceived as bad news, and I think even simple updates for teams is really important. That said, 76% of staff are confident about returning to work. So, a good chunk of these will have already returned to work through outside reopening. And then, I think with the weather being great over the past week or so, I managed to get out for a couple of pints this weekend on yesterday, which was amazing. And, it was great to, with the weather helping, I think it's great to see, smiling teams, albeit behind masks, smiling guys. And I think there was a confidence there as well. But I think quite easily that, there is a proportion of people who aren't very confident, and there's also an element of in difficult trading conditions and also in difficult operational kind of settings that can quite easily be chipped away at. What are people most looking forward to? Well, as you'd hope to see, it's working with colleagues and team members again, but equally it's interacting with customers. And I think, alongside the needs for people to make more money and get their tips flowing again, I think the importance of working with colleagues again, interacting with customers is important. So, one thing I think that we've spent with some of our clients is trying to ensure that actually in a socially distanced trading environment, how do you ensure that there is some element of people being able to socialize within work, or at least be civil within work with masks on, etc. And also then there's the challenge of new starters and how do you get them brought into a new team as well. So again, it highlights some of those themes around ensuring that you're communicating effectively to people, ensuring that you're introducing people, inducting people correctly, maybe in ways that you hadn't done before, and maybe with more of a digital spin on things as well, where actually people are getting to grips with their new colleagues before they start their shift, because there's a reality and pragmatism that there is not going to be a huge amount of opportunity for people to have a drink or have a staff drink after work, etc. As I mentioned before, there's a risk that things can be chipped away at to some extent, but I think the overwhelming words people are using about returning to work are excited and motivated and hopeful. And I think you don't want to kind of dilute the importance of those three words, but I think you can see around this word cloud as well that you see words like apprehensive, concerned, nervous, fearful, all things kind of along a similar theme. And again, I think it's important that we take note of those, and actually again, based on the kind of busyness in and around certain shifts, and even anecdotally again, hearing some incredible trading figures that people are getting out of small amounts of covers in an outside space, but equally that puts pressure on teams, and that pressure on teams can kind of rise up in different ways, and often that'll be in terms of nervousness, apprehension and things. So making sure that you're giving the team support and an opportunity to raise issues that they have, and equally backing them versus in terms of their comfort in working with customers that may be more challenging as well, and empowering them to challenge customers when they are maybe being a little bit more challenging to deal with. I think we can see here that that apprehension comes through. So albeit 43% of people can't wait to return to work, 43% are looking forward but are a little apprehensive, and then there's just over 10% who are very worried or more nervous. And I think that again, communicating the changes that are being made to COVID processes, making sure that people are comfortable with the new environment, making sure that you're backing them versus with customers as well, I think again is a really important factor here. I think the kind of flip side of this is, I forget my mouse to work, is that it's the impact on mental health. So 24% would like to see mental health and well-being prioritized by their employers, and I think this is something where we've seen a real uptick, and I'm sure in what Carolyn will say in terms of the support that the licensed trade charity provide, there's lots of focus in and around that in terms of some of the things that they do with ourselves and more broadly as well. And I think there's been a real focus in terms of the industry at large, probably to some extent before the pandemic, and obviously emphasized and probably accelerated through the pandemic itself. but I think the highlighted importance continued from team members that they want it to be a priority is important. And I think the reality is, because of that, is people are still concerned around the safety of colleagues and personal safety. And again, I think this really highlights the importance of both financial well-being, mental well-being, and also the support that you're giving people to deal with difficult customers, and the training in and around that space as well, because there are still significant proportions of team members that are slightly or very concerned around their own or their team safety or their own personal safety. And I think those are the kind of two fundamentals that kind of keep how you're communicating what's being done in those spaces, how things are evolving, are kind of the real fundamental building blocks for making sure that you've got an engaged and happy team. And this is kind of a breakdown, almost in kind of a not quite hierarchy of needs, but the principle being that well-being, both mental well-being, financial well-being, etc., and physical safety of team members, I think, are the fundamental building blocks of how things, we can create employee engagement. I think the communication kind of side, and I've mentioned it various times, and it's a buzzword at any point to say we need to communicate better. The reality now is that we have to really be open and clear within that, and like I said before, possibly share things that we've been not comfortable in sharing before. And I think making sure that also repeating key messages as well, because I think that can help cultivate the right culture. But equally, from a learning and development perspective and a career basis or on a formal basis, with learning and development, they have lots of things in place. But the reality is that the communication around that isn't as consistent as it should or could be, and ensuring that is the right case is important. The reality there is that those who are highly engaged are more committed to staying in the industry long term as well. So we can see here the difference between highly engaged individuals and those with the benchmark of January, to see, looking at the long term side of things, those that are highly engaged are more likely to remain in the sector longer term and over 5 years. So if you can highlight then the career paths, the learning and development opportunities, and the consistent communication underpinning all of that, it really gives the clear link to bottom line, essentially, in that reduced retention issues, people staying longer term, understanding the business better, selling products better, so on and so forth. And I think broadly, the support that businesses provided has been perceived quite positively. So, we've seen satisfaction around the lockdown periods being quite good. We've seen an increase in people being very satisfied, and also 15% being somewhat satisfied. So again, really positive, and from the background of maybe where hospitality was perceived to be in terms of some support that it would provide its employees, I think this is a really positive move. I think the reality is that this is a relative now baseline for us to continue to build on from. And if you think of this as an element in a focus on recruitment, if you were to be asked by a new potential hire in an interview, how did you deal with certain situations, and you can't be confident, or your team wouldn't back you up in the confidence that you're going to answer with, I think that'll increasingly be a challenge and a hygiene factor that we need to be able to deal with as an industry and businesses within the industry. Because, as I mentioned before, that it's a relative baseline of improvement, and I think that there's potentially a risk for a little bit of fatigue getting in here as well. Compared to previous lockdowns, how was your support from your employees this lockdown? We've seen a net loss in terms of 18% worse than previous to 17% of previous lockdowns. Maybe that's negligible in the grand scheme of things, but I think equally the principle of us needing to make sure that we stay on the front foot with things that are engaging, and we kind of ensure that this is a relative measure is important. If you think that the stress and challenges that a team faces in a lockdown scenario when we're not trading to a scenario when we are trading, they are completely and utterly hugely different, yet they're still going to have well-being challenges in both contexts. So how you evolve what well-being means in each scenario and how you support your teams is increasingly important. And I think we've seen well-being be prioritized again, which is great. And I think it's important to see that development. And again, we need to see that continue to drive trust within teams. It's a really important foundation for us to see that people believe and trust that their well-being is genuinely a priority and not just paid lip service. And if we start to look at the different areas where that different support and how people perceive that support across areas of financial, mental, physical, and career development support, I think you can see there's a bit of a difference, and albeit the financial support is underpinned and supported by government support, of course, at a cost of the business as well, which should not be forgotten in any way, shape, or form. But I think the other elements that we see in terms of professional development maybe start to drop off a little bit. And I think, in principle, a few years ago, a couple of times, Starbucks had taken the opportunity to completely close their business to do training. That's extreme, and a business that's able to do that. The pub industry, restaurant business over the past year has been closed and had an opportunity to train pragmatically. Maybe it's not been the easiest time to train, but equally, I think the importance of continuing to show that there is opportunities to develop within businesses, and also continue to train and signpost to training opportunities, development opportunities as well, both focused on the industry and skills more broadly, I think is going to increase in its importance. And from a team member perspective as well, I think people are expecting increased focus on hygiene initiatives, reduced capacity, and I think whatever of these areas that we see listed here, it's important that the communication around what your business is doing in these areas is really clear to be able to understand and know what's going on in each of these areas, both for the customers, clearly, because hygiene is going to be more important than ever as a relative driver of visit, but equally for our teams as well, and how that relationship works together. And I think, in terms of what is being prioritized, or what our team members would like to be prioritized, I think the regular communication is absolutely top of the list. And again, I think the kind of line of no news is bad news, I think is possibly the most kind of pertinent line to take here. And that if you're not saying that everything is okay, then people can start to worry that things aren't okay. And I think, irrespective of you're a supplier, an operator, I think that's really the case. I think then prioritizing, mental health and well-being, ourselves as a learning development provider, most of our focus over the past year has been around providing content to help people with their resilience, with their mental health, with their financial well-being. And we expect that to be a continued driver of our content creation and our training support in the coming months and years too, as that becomes a key driver of engagement. I think then where we see where there's a little bit of a weakness for the industry is that most people are seeing social media as being a key driver of their communication and support initiatives. So, albeit that's important, because lots of trade associations and all of us on the call, on the webinar today, have channels where those things will be shared. I think the reality is that the employer has to take the lead in this space as well, to make sure that the messaging is consistent, relevant for the people in your team, and also making sure that it's absolutely correct as well. And I think we need to hopefully see that employee communication line change a little bit and become the more dominant number within this chart in future. Because the real reality is that if we can drive confidence and motivated teams, we see a drop in apprehension and nervousness. And clearly that has an impact then in terms of our retention, and therefore the impact on our guests, and therefore the impact on sales and off the back of that as well. So I think there is a hugely, as to the levers that we pull around some of these quite fundamental requirements for team members, I think they really have a benefit in terms of the kind of virtuous circle that they tie into. And I think then that starts to hopefully harbour more positive thoughts around career opportunities as well. We started something a few months ago called Aspire, which is essentially an area for us to share stories in hospitality of people at all levels who've developed their careers in hospitality. And I think that, the principle of that within your own businesses and sharing success, I think is really important. And I think to highlight the success people have had, and hopefully we'll see this grow further in the future, so people seeing hospitality as offering good career opportunities. And irrespective of it always, the kind of narrative of bar to boardroom is great, but equally there's lots of great careers in between the layers that are also important as well. And because the reality is 48% of hospitality professionals that we've surveyed want to see career progression programs, and they want them to be more available to them in the future. And I think many businesses maybe have informal things in place or more formal things in place within this space. But I think the reality is they're not always communicated frequently. They're not always repeated as being an opportunity frequently either. And I think one thing we've seen within training more broadly in the past year, as things have moved 90% online, is that training is democratized and learning is democratized as a result of that. So no longer is someone having to not do a qualification or not do something on because they have to travel to a hotel room 60 miles away from where they live and take half a day out and not pick up the kids from nursery or school. The reality is now they can fit things around online in their own time, distance learning, doing qualifications online, which is a big focus of ours now. And I think the reality is that we need to make sure as an industry we give those, we share those opportunities for development and ensure we keep people in our business longer as well. And I think that the most pertinent number to kind of emphasize that a little bit more is that 78% of the professionals we surveyed are actively looking at ways to continue their own professional development, and that's actually increased versus July last year. So the fact that people are really pushing on and continuing to evolve their desires for personal development, I think was quite surprising to me and our team, because we expected maybe things to be a little bit of fatigue. Maybe people look, particularly by just learning online for a period of time. But the reality is that people are really actively looking towards it. And again, from lots of different platforms and Instagram channels and TikTok feeds for people to be able to subscribe to, all drive learning in one way, shape or form. And it's around, providing, and signposting people's opportunities to reach them, either through a business like ours or yourselves, quite simply as well. It doesn't always have a huge cost to it. And the reality is that only 2 in 5 of those in the industry that we surveyed are very satisfied with the opportunities around L&D provided by their employer. And you're always going to see a slight distraction on this, because people always want more. But the reality is that there is a perception that they want more, and therefore there has to be a drive from us as an industry to keep pushing that. And again, as a provider ourselves, we're looking to things that we can do ourselves that are free to wear for individuals to come to us, and to be about certain training is for the individual and some is for the business and for the safety and effectiveness of the business as well. And where are those areas of learning development that people are interested in? Well, skills and personal development, career progression, product knowledge training. And I think there's for wet-led operators, drink-led operators, we see kind of a little bit more focus there when we split the data out for people who want to understand about products and categories and things in more detail there as well. We're doing a lot in terms of self-directed learning to give people the opportunity to do what's relevant for them, what's pertinent to them, what they're passionate about. But the reality is all of these areas score high. So the expectation is that, people want to be able to learn in lots of different areas all at the same time. So, a challenge for us to kind of take head on. So to kind of distill things down into, no pun intended, into a few key points. I think, as I mentioned throughout, and I don't mean to kind of harp on too much about communication, but the reality is that the open communication is absolutely crucial for businesses at the moment, and continually, we've been open, and therefore the genie of openness is out. So we have to make sure that we continue to share information and push. The expectation is that people will continue to share how businesses are performing, and like I say, no news is potentially bad news. I think the importance of resilience. Work is hard, even just the physical exertion of people being on their feet all day after not being on their feet all day for a significant amount of time, it is hard. And the challenge of recruitment and business and hitting your P&Ls is hard. So I think reinforcing the resilience, resilience is a learned behavior. It isn't something that is just experienced, and therefore if you have an experience, you are therefore resilient. People need to be shown that they have been resilient, and you need to tell them and support them and help them and coach them through that process, and equally point them to resources to help them in that as well. And I think that comes and links to well-being as well. Well-being doesn't stop whether you're closed, on furlough, not working at all, or working long hours in a week. Well-being is relative to each of those situations, and how as an industry and businesses we support our teams is really, really important in each of those different scenarios. And the reality is, if we do that, happy teams drive experience, and customer experience drives sales. And I think that's a really important thing, again, as a lever to pull, that yes, we're doing this to help our teams be happy and engaged and hopefully enjoy our jobs. All of those things are absolutely crucial, but the output of those things is a better commercial output for our business, and there's no more important time than that right now. I think as a final layer as well, it's ensuring that people on a retention level, we see career and personal development is central to what you do. Now, if you can work with a business like ours or others, great, absolutely great that you can provide materials as well. But there's value in training within businesses already. There is value within the experience of individuals already, and it's making sure that people are aware of that, if nothing else, and signposting to so many free materials that are out there right now that are kind of is the final piece that I think is crucially important. So if anyone wants a copy of the slides or any of the bits of data, obviously it's been recorded, so you can listen to my beautiful tones again. But if you don't want to, then you can drop me an email, or if you've got any questions that I can't answer now, then drop me an email and I will stop sharing my screen.
Jamie, thank you very much. That was fascinating. I've been furiously writing notes myself. Well, every day is a school day. I particularly loved some of the kind of recommendations and advice you gave around things like, one of the reasons why people work in the hospitality industry is, I suppose, the social aspect of it. And if that isn't possible, at the end of the shift to have a drink together and things, how you can recreate that, and perhaps thinking about how you can do, how you can use digital platforms to recreate that experience and make sure that they get to enjoy those things even in a different environment. So that's really interesting. We don't have any questions on the Q&A, but I do have a couple of questions, if that's okay, before you go. I know you have to leave because obviously you've got a huge workload with some of the changes that have been happening for your organisation, so I won't keep you too long. One of the things you mentioned was Aspire, and I just wondered how we would learn a bit more about that. Is that something on your website? What is it exactly, and how could people engage with that?
Yeah, so we call it a content channel, which sounds rather grand. Essentially, it's some things that we share. So we kind of, the fundamentals of it are interviews with individuals in hospitality. So we've done our first 3. We're filming at the moment for some more. So we've got a bar manager in Liverpool for a small restaurant group. We've got a server from Hawksmoor in Manchester, and we've got a chef in Manchester, a senior sous chef in Manchester, all talking about the challenges and opportunities that they face within hospitality, and then various kind of learnings that they've gone through as well. So it's all on our website. There's a YouTube channel. There's a Twitter feed for it as well, and there's various bits of content that will kind of evolve and come off the back of that as well. So yeah, I can share a link with you to share with anyone on the webinar now if they're interested in it. And again, that's all just out there that we're providing for the industry.
That's great, thank you. Well, we can send an email out to everybody after the webinar. So if you send me the link, I'll make sure that's included in our follow-up email. So that's great, thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned that I think it's 24% of employees believe that mental health support is really important, and well-being, and that they're really interested in sort of getting better support around that. Do you feel that employers are recognising that as a key issue? Are you getting people coming to you with support around that, or do you think is it translating from a need into it being recognised a need by employers?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is, and I think it was before the pandemic as well. I think this has just accelerated the desire and the need for that, because it was an absolute necessity. I think the challenge is to make sure that it's seen as a necessity and not a tick box and exercise. So if that I just made up a new term, then the tick box exercise rather. So I think the more that we can evolve it as a thing and as a way for people to learn and train and evolve themselves, I think it's really important, because it's not just you do a course once online and that's it. That it needs everyone to be fully aware of how to talk to people, how to share, how to have difficult conversations. All those things are really important. That it's an evolution rather than just something we do once, tick the box and move on. I think that's the main thing, is that businesses and individuals in hospitality, broadly in society as well, but especially for our industry, is that we focus on that being a living and breathing thing that changes based on a situational context. It doesn't just stop because you're now open. It changes because you're open. And again, from some of the interviews that we've done on Aspire, even the point you mentioned before, Sylvia, around it'd be great for people to have a staff drink, that actually puts a lot of pressure on people as well, because they feel they have to go on nights out, and then there's a lifestyle around hospitality in certain quarters that maybe is a bit more of a challenge for people to deal with. People got drugs problems, etc. It causes lots of different problems as well. So there's kind of a cause and effect in lots of different areas, and it's making sure that people are aware of what those are, to be able to change as the context changes.
Absolutely. I guess it's like any policy procedure document that you have in a licensed premises. It's a dynamic sort of policy or document or way of working, and you just adjust as things change and as you learn more about your team and life and those kind of topics. So great. Well, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with the sort of the shift in what's happening with your business. We look forward to seeing how that all unfolds. So I'll let you go, and I will hand over to Carolyn of the Licensed Trade Charity. Thanks,
cool,
Jamie.
Thanks. If any questions come to mind, just drop me an email. But thank you, and thanks for letting me go so early. Don't be too rude. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hi there. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. Yes.
Okay. Actually, it's quite a nice follow-on really from Jamie, because we can offer you CPL services. So I'll talk about that in a minute, and they're free. Bonus. So that's something that you can take advantage of. Just for those of you that don't know what we do, we're very similar to the Drinks Trust. We both offer very similar support. Some of it differs, and what I was going to try and do today was sort of talk about the stuff that I know the Drinks Trust don't do, and there's some stuff that Drinks Trust do that we don't. And actually, between us, we've probably got a really nice combination of a package of support for you all, which I hope you'll be really pleased about. We have been going since 1793, so again, another long-standing charity. One of my massive bugbears is people haven't heard of us, and that's what I really want to change. We have been called the best secret in the hospitality industry, which is not good. It shouldn't be a secret, because we're free and we really want to help people in the trade. So we tried to remedy that by doing a new campaign. It was called Time to Open Up before COVID came about, and then we thought that maybe not appropriate because you couldn't open up. So we now call it Time to Talk. And our whole remit is whatever your staff or you as licensees running your own businesses are affected by, you can talk to us about it. So that doesn't have to be, it can be mental health, but it can also be practical stuff. We have a management line. So if you've got, people managing staff and it's a bit new for them, or they're a bit rusty because they've been off work for ages, we can help with that. We can do stuff on housing, money, loads of stuff. So if nothing else, as that sort of slide's been up for a while, if you just put that number in your phone, because you never know, when you may need to speak to a staff member that needs your help. That's one thing that's really good, because that helpline is 24/7, it's free. And the one really good thing, I gave you the definition of who we can help, but in your pub, we can help everyone. So it doesn't matter if they're your kitchen porter, you, or anyone in between that works behind the bar, the chefs, even if you employ a cleaner, excuse me, frog in throat, we can help them as well. So really, it's a great asset. And I've spent the last probably good 2 months speaking to pub companies, large and small. So one-offs or two-offs, probably like you guys listening today, to people like Green King have got 40,000 pubs, to ones in between that also have breweries. And the underlying message I've got is that I really do underline what Jamie just said. It's saying it's okay to not be okay is really important at the moment. And funny enough, whatever level I've been speaking to, whether it's an HR director or someone working behind the bar, there is this contingency of anxiousness about coming back to the pubs. And you'll find that some of your teams won't want to admit that to you because they feel that that's a weakness. And what you need to do is not worry about that and just sort of help them to get the help they need. So if you just share this number with them, that would be a great thing to start with. Excuse me. Sorry. We help in 6 different areas. I'm going to have to get some water. I don't know if you want to take
That's okay. I can. Yeah, I can just step in for a minute. I was going to say to you, would you like to get some water? Sometimes it's the only solution, isn't it? You go, and I shall hold the fort.
I'm going to sound like I'm 98.
Don't worry, it's fine.
So, I mean, I'm happy if you want Millie to do a swap and I can carry on. What would you like to do?
No, you go. You won't be too long, will you? And then I'll just I'll tell everybody a joke. No,
Okay.
I'll just keep the audience for a moment, just to say, obviously we're recording these sessions. We'll send them out. Send the link to the video out after today. We also have the All Hands to the Pump website, which has got a page of resources on it. So if you've not seen that, it's quite useful for licensed premises operators, because we split it down by different topics, and then there's lots of different links to free resources on there. So if you haven't checked that out, just a little ad break to promote the website that offers support. Right, and we have Carolyn back. I don't want to rush you. Have you had some water?
I've got a normal voice on now.
Okay.
I remember in a past life, I had a sort of lessons on how to do presentations, and this was one of them. If you have a coughing fit, just admit it. Go and have a glass of water, which is easy to do when you're at home, but hard to do when you've got 400 people in front of you. Okay, our suite of help is probably anything that worries anyone. So we cover mental health, housing, money, employment, sport, and education. So it's not really that much that you can't speak to us about. With mental health, again, obviously leading on from Jamie, we are running mental health training at the moment. It's online, it's only 2 hours long, and the whole remit of it is, as Jamie said, is to help anyone that manages people. So that can be a team leader, supervisor, owner of the pub, to have that difficult conversation if they think the staff are not right. I have seen a lot of anxiousness at probably every level about returning to work, because there's a lot of pressure on you all. You know, you're supposed to be running a business and wanting to make a profit, and you've had to contend with so much over the last 18 months, dealing with staff being on furlough. Are they going to come back? What are your staff going to be like? Are the public going to return? Are they going to be happy to return? So we know that that's a lot of plate spinning for you to think about before you open your businesses. So what we want to try and do is make it easier for you to deal with your staff, because we can do that for you really, and free and 24/7. So we've noticed that with mental health, it has sort of accentuated. And when people first got locked down, they were worried about money and how are they going to afford things. So that's before the word furlough was even invented. Do you remember those first few days when no one knew what they were doing? That was really scary. You had to look up furlough in the dictionary. And then we came to a stage where people knew that they were going to get some wages, or most of them were. And then we found that there was an issue sort of a few months in on the first lockdown with people suffering with isolation and loneliness issues, because they were, you know, they lived in maybe bedsits or small flat shares, and they couldn't get to see their family. And as you know, people in hospitality love people. That's why they did the job in the first place. So that was causing a bit of an issue. And we had a massive increase to our helpline of calls, people worried about loneliness and isolation. And now, having spoken to people, because obviously, like Millie, we've worked through the whole of lockdown, speaking to people all the time. There is some anxiousness of, am I going to be good enough? Have I still got it? You know, I remember when I was younger being on holiday for 2 weeks and coming back to work, and you think things have moved on a lot. Whereas if you've been out of your business for 13 months, that is going to take its toll on your confidence. So what we want to do is try and address that. And we're doing free mental health training twice a week at the moment. I think it'd be once a week once you open, because we know you're going to have to sort of settle down and open your pubs. But there's bookings for the rest of this year. And the whole point of it is for a manager to not be a counsellor, but be supportive. So the rudiment of the course is so that you can know how to feel confident about having those conversations with people that are maybe going through a bit of a bad patch, what to say, how to say it, and where to say it. And then what's really great, they can phone us or the Drinks Trust. You then know that if someone is suffering a bit with their mental health, or they're anxious or worried about stuff, they can phone our helpline and then get some professional help from real counsellors that are trained. So what's great is, even when you've had that conversation, there's some follow-up from us. And that we do 6 sessions of telephone counselling. So if someone is really anxious, that usually does address the problem. So this is what we're here to sort of tell you about, that there are some things in place for you to speak to your staff about that may take the worry of everything else you've got on your shoulders away a bit. We do financial grants. There is some criteria for that. So anyone who's worked in the trade, and it doesn't have to be at your pub or premises for 5 years or more, can get financial support from us in all of those areas that you can see on screen. So health, housing, money. I think there will be a contingency of people worried about their housing when the freeze on evictions is lifted, because you know there will be people that are behind with their rent 100%, and they'll be worried that what you don't want to do is go back to work and then be worried that you might be losing your accommodation. So we can do sort of grants for that, sometimes to pay off rent arrears, mortgage arrears. We can't give you thousands, but we can certainly try and get you out of a hole. If we've had quite a few people sadly in lockdown that have been made homeless because things haven't worked out, and we can do rent and deposit, so that secures someone some accommodation. If someone's still coming back to work and then they're signed off sick and you can't pay them after sick pay, or you don't do sick pay, which I totally understand, we can do short-term hardship grants. Again, it's not loads of money, but it will pay for the essentials to take the worry off them so that they can pay bills and get some food on the table. Employment support, I won't talk about too much, because obviously at the moment you are hoping that all your staff are coming back. We do have employment staff if, for instance, you have that really difficult situation where you have to let staff go. I really hope that's not the case and that you don't have to speak to us about that. I just wanted to let you know that support's there. We do outplacement services. And also with employment support, we offer probably, I think it's 3/4 of the packages that CPL offer. So we were really wanting to get out to the guys that are sort of listening today. So you don't have a great big HR department. You are probably HR operations director and everything else when you run your pub. So your staff, free of charge, can take advantage of the CPL learning modules. And we have things like resilience, leading good teams, mental health, being a coffee barista, pairing gins, that's my favorite, and anything in between. So any of those modules can be accessed by your team. Just go on our website. All you need to do is register and then pick 3 packages of modules that you want to learn. So that's on offer to you, because we realized that we knew it was going to be hard for you guys to try and open and make a profit. So if we can get some of your staff to do a bit of online training, then to me that is going to make your openings a lot smoother. And the other thing we just finished, this is a bit of an early experiment, but it's worked out really well, is we've also just run a course for a pub company. I can't name it yet, but we had 3 online sessions about change and resilience and actually returning back to work. And do you know, we learned so much that we heard frontline. It's not just your frontline staff that are anxious. We were talking to business development managers, people in the brewery who were still really worried about coming back, and felt that because they're managers, they're going to have to act and look all confident, and sometimes didn't feel confident. So if you're interested in this resilience training, we've got a brilliant company called Create Results that do coaching. That's what she does for a living. We could look at running sessions for that if there's an appetite for it. So again, you can email me after this session and I can let you know a bit more about it. What I don't want to do is like talk forever, but you know, we do want to help you. And last year, as you can imagine, was a bit of a bumpy year. In 2019, we helped 23,000 people. In 2020, 73,000 people. So that is a massive increase. We gave away 1.96 million in grants. Mental health, there was 41% of our calls for mental health to our helpline. The helpline calls tripled, which I see as a good thing. You know, you might think that as a negative thing, but my personal opinion is, if you can try and get help before you get to a crisis point, that can only be a really good thing for your mental well-being and your staff's mental well-being. It will also, if you encourage people to phone our helpline, I think it will give you a bit of a more smooth opening, because those guys will be allaying their worries before they sort of get open. I know you've probably got some pubs open already that have gardens, but you've got all of those pubs opening that don't have gardens on the 17th of May. So by speaking to you now, you might be able to speak to your staff so that they know what's on offer. We, as I said, we do housing. We gave away 143,000 pounds to keep people in their own homes. Money, we offered 4,780 grants. We did things for health, education, because we also have 3 schools, and that's what funds our charity. again, I won't talk about too much about that because you've got a lot on your plate, and I think that's a bit further down the line. But really, all we want you to do is encourage your staff to phone us about anything that's worrying them. And you know that we're going to be around. We've been around for 228 years. We're not going anywhere. All we want to do, and we've just really loved the fact that Sylvia has invited to speak today, is for you to know about us. Because if you know about us, you know where to signpost people to. And that will be music to my ears, really, because that's our remit to help you. So apologies about my coughing fit. I need to phone my own helpline after this, but I hope that it's given you a bit of insight about how we can help, and then I'll hand you over in capable hands of Millie. And if there's any questions, I'm around, and then I can put my email address on the chat and you can get in touch with me after.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Carolyn. So actually, like you said earlier, the Jamie's presentation was an excellent precursor into what you've been talking about, because really it sounds like what you supply is almost like a free well-being service to sort of plug that gap or that need that has been highlighted through Jamie's survey. So actually it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it, in terms of businesses or operators being able to signpost their staff to what you offer, because there's just no downside to it. So
there aren't, well, I can't think of any, and obviously I know I'm a bit biased, but I can't think of many. And the other thing that I forgot to mention, and again, I won't take up too much more time, but have a look on the website, is we also brought out a wellbeing app, financial wellbeing app. So that actually addresses all the money side of things, and it's called Nudge. And what it does is it looks a bit like Facebook or Twitter when you look at it, when you sign up for it. And it then looks at all the aspects of your financial well-being to make you feel a bit more in control of your money. We picked it because we thought it was quite pubbified. We have researched quite a lot of financial well-being products, and they've seen a bit dry or condescending or patronizing, which we really didn't want to happen. So I put my profile in. I pretended to be a student, a 90-year-old, 8-year-old woman, and anything in between, just to make sure this product worked. And it gives you tips on saving, how to save, for happier times, how to save on your holiday insurance, if you're surviving on a reduced income, what to do if you're in debt, if you're about to retire, how you go about finding a pension, all of those things. And again, that's completely free. We bought 3,000 licenses. So we're funding this, and it's on our money section of the website, and all you need to do is your email address and log on, and it's yours.
Wow, that sounds great. One question I have for you was that you mentioned something about resilience training, and if people are interested in that, can you just repeat a little bit about what that was, just so that people are clear about what the opportunity is, please?
This one is called the change curve. And when sort of bad things happen, like obviously COVID, and it was sort of invented initially when people have bereavement. Mm-hmm. So when people have a bereavement, or they go through a really hard transition, they go through different sort of emotions through this change curve. And it's also trying to recognize where maybe your team members are on that change curve. So some people may come across a bit angry, and it's only because they're scared of sort of coming back. Some people may be absolutely fine about it and then have a bit of a reaction later. And really all it is recognizing where you are on the change curve, because you guys that are running pubs are probably a bit slightly anxious at the moment if you're not already open, and if you are open, still hoping it's going to be a success. And really it's giving people permission to say, okay, I'm not on a great part of the curve, so how do I change that? And managing change, so that, because a lot of people have an inner saboteur who tells them they're not good enough and tells them that it's all going to go a bit wrong. And I think we all are susceptible to that sometimes in our lives. And it tries to change that into being your inner leader and looking at things positively. And if they're not working, that's fine, but talk to your staff about it and then make sure that it can work, so that your pub's a success. So that's what it's talking about. The feedback we've had, we're in session 2 of 3 sessions, has been phenomenal. I've been really chuffed to bits. They said that it really made them look at themselves, look at their staff, and then when they went back to the pubs after the first session, they were going, I wonder where they are on the change curve. So they started looking at all their team members and like trying to guess where they might have been. So then, And there was one team member that went back, and someone was having a really hard time, and just from being on the course, he managed to have a chat with them, and they felt a lot better about things. So that's what it's about, really.
Great, excellent, thank you very much.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring you back in afterwards for a bit of a discussion with Millie and myself, if that's okay. But
yeah, because we do very
yes, brilliant. And we can cover a couple of extra sort of topics more broadly and open up the floor to more questions. So yes, Millie, if I can hand over to you now, please, that'd be great.
Of course, I will just share my screen. Right. Can everyone see that okay? Perfect, lovely. Right, well, before I start talking about the drinks community, I'm going to sort of backtrack slightly and talk about the Drinks Trust, which is the charity that owns the drinks community. So like I mentioned before, the Drinks Trust was founded in 1886. It was formerly known as the Benevolent, and we help people all across the drinks industry. So whether that's in beer, wine, spirit, cider, no and low, and we help people from the point of production to the point of sale. So you can be anywhere in the chain when it comes to getting support from the Drinks Trust. And as the same as what Carolyn said, 2020 was obviously a bumpy year for the Drinks Trust because of what happened over the last 12 months. So we supported about 5,000 beneficiaries last year with about £1.2 million of support, which was about double what we were normally doing beforehand. And obviously that was directly due to what was happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we're coming out of lockdown as well, just today we also launched, as I mentioned earlier, the Another Round campaign, which is for anyone who's still unemployed and still furloughed, even though places are starting to re-emerge from lockdown. And that's £125,000 worth of grants at £400 each. And that's for anyone who, like I said, is unemployed or still furloughed, and you can just go onto the Drinks Trust website and apply for that. Obviously there is some criteria, but it's very easy to be able to show what your circumstances are. And the same with LTC as well. We have some Julian, a counsellor, and we also have Sleep Station, which is specifically focused at helping people who are having trouble sleeping, something that I massively struggled with over the last 12 months, and something that I think is always pertinent for the hospitality and the drinks industry in particular, with working hours and the culture of working in bars and late nights and maybe having a bit of a drink after work and things like that. We also, on that note, work with the mindful drinking movement. So that is helping people to look after their well-being through their drinking habits, and that's run by Club Soda as well. And we also have our helpline, which is on the website, and that is free to use 24 hours a day. And we also have a WhatsApp, which we set up this year as well. So if people are in a situation where they can't make a phone call because they're not in a private area, or it's not safe to do so, they can send a message to our WhatsApp number and someone will get back to them as soon as possible. So that's a bit on the Drinks Trust. And what I'm going to be talking about primarily today is the drinks community, which is a new platform that was launched at the beginning of this year. I came on board with the Drinks Trust in January because I myself was made redundant at the end of last year from my role, and we very slowly but surely put this into action. It's been a project that has been sort of been spoken about and worked on for the last 12 months or so. And it was actually a project that was conceived before COVID happened. And as soon as COVID hit, it just became even more obvious that we needed something like this. So in a nutshell, the drinks community is an online forum portal. It's interactive. You become a member, so we're growing a nice community of people within the drinks industry. I kind of call it a hybrid between LinkedIn and Facebook because it's a bit less corporate than LinkedIn, but a bit more professional than Facebook. So it's a place where people can share their knowledge, ask questions, and just chat to each other about any issues that are coming up within their sector. So I will take you very quickly just through how it looks if you wanted to join it. So we are thedrinkscommunity.org.uk, and you'll land on this page, and we have information on what the purpose of the community is, which is to share knowledge, share learnings, network with people, make connections. The mission, which is what we're hoping will happen within the next 12 months or so. Our founding committee, which Sylvia sits on. So we have a fantastic group of people in the industry who work product side. So people like Alex from the Liquor Company, Amber from Nomad, bar consultants, Declan, who was at the Savoy and now at the Boatyard Distillery, people from the wine industry, and events as well. So we've got people covering lots of different aspects of the industry on there, and they basically help me put together resources and look at the portal and make sure that it's doing what we want it to do. So effectively, what happens is you can click on join the drinks community, and then you will end up on a page that looks like this, and you'll have an option here. I'm already signed in so that I can show you everything, but effectively it's free to use for everyone, so anyone can use it however they would like to, whenever they would like to. But we do also have other options, which are that you can donate £5 a month to the Drinks Trust or £10 a month to the Drinks Trust. And that's completely optional, but what that donation does is to help fund all of our wellness services. So any money that is getting put into the drinks community is going straight back to the industry as well. And once you land in to this page, you can sign up, choose what kind of access you want, free or donation access, and then you create your profile and you land in the drinks community. So this is what it looks like at the moment. So we have a nice homepage, and this is all of the resources that I have scheduled for this month. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on so that I can go through that a bit more thoroughly. And effectively the homepage is where all of the latest information is on the community. So for example, we announced our Another Round campaign this morning. We have a forum, I'll talk about that later as well, that people can RSVP to. We have people who are within the community writing pieces for us, whether that's first person pieces or whether that's more vocation led or advice led. We have people from the likes of Healthy Hospo, Tim Etherington Judge, talking about his product and also about Healthy Hospo. And it's basically, this is all the latest stuff that people have been posting. And the way it works is that this top section is for myself, and this is where I populate with resources, and we have a really nice introduction section, which is where whoever joins can just come on within 3 sentences, introduce who they are, say what they do and what they like about the drinks industry. And then we have the Drinks Trust, which is where my colleagues who are more on the wellness side of things can post anything that they would like about the Drinks Trust. We also have an inspiration section. So this is what I meant when I was talking about the content. So we have people from all over the industry who are very kindly writing pieces for us, and whether that's about their career, their personal journey into the industry, any advice they've got, any help they're offering the industry as well. And we're getting people from all different sides of the industry. So whether that's media, so people like Neil Ridley, who's a journalist, people who are completely new to the industry. So Cameron Foster, he's just started his own company. So he wrote something on what it's like to be completely new to the industry and the challenges he's facing. Mark Ward, who has his own brand of vermouth, and he's been in the industry for a while. So he's talking about an open view on failure and how it's always a bang. And people just talking generally about their careers and, you know, nice things like reasons to feel positive in 2021. So I'm working with a lot of people across the industry to create all of those resources and keep that section an inspiring place for people to be. We also have vocational resources, which is something we're starting to work on. So these are going to be more focused on practical tips within the industry. So, for example, things you need to know if you're setting up a distillery, things you need to know if you're setting up a pub. I'm starting a really big project on distilling down all the different roles within the drinks industry, because I think sometimes people don't realise the myriad roles that are out there for them. And we'll be doing videos with people who are within those roles, and then having downloadable documents in there that say what the job spec is, what your expected salary would be, the qualifications that you might need for it. So it's basically a one-stop shop for anyone who's thinking about moving on in their career or starting their career in the drinks industry, as to what options they have and what they need to do to be open for those options. We have the Drinks Community TV, which we launched last week. So we had our first forum last week, which was on the importance of career mobility. We had a fantastic panel. We had people from WSET, we had the Hendrix Gin ambassador, Drew Mallins, who heads up the London Bartender Association, and Simi Sama, who is an HR consultant. And that was an hour's talk about the importance of career mobility and what you can do to make yourself as open as possible to opportunities as the industry reopens, and jobs hopefully start coming up. And we have one this Thursday, which I'm hosting as well, about empathy in the workplace, and that's specifically around how to look after staff as they go back to work. So a lot of the things that Carolyn was mentioning earlier, just making sure that people you know, who've been out of work for 13 or so months feel prepared to go back, and what bar owners or pub owners or restaurant owners can do to make sure that their whole team is working together and looking after each other. And we've got really fantastic panelists on there as well, some not particularly from the drinks industry, but people who work in that area. That's our specialised field. So we've got plenty more of those coming up as well. We've got one the following week on how to nurture talent and develop leaders. And then we're going to be running 2 of those a month, and it'll be very much based on what's happening in the industry at that given time. So they'll be as relevant as physically possible for people when they watch them. And you can RSVP to them within the community as well. And then we have loads of other spaces, and what people can do is they can head to a space, become a member, and then they get constant updates about said space. So if you want to be updated about all the news that's going on, we regularly post any articles in there. Opportunities is where either people who have roles that maybe aren't very specific at the moment, but they know that they're going to be opening a pub in 6 months' time and they're going to need some staff, they can put an open shout out on here, and people can show their interest. Or people who are out of work and want to showcase what they can do, they can post in opportunities and say, hi, I'm a bartender, I'm out of work, this is where I've worked. And it's just a great way of people putting themselves out there to the community. And we have podcasts as well, and any events that are running that are relevant to the trade as well. And then, yeah, all these sections are for people to join based on whatever industry they work in. So I'll just show you an example of one, and this is where people can post whatever they would like on that. Obviously, within reason, I am monitoring this on a day-to-day basis, so it's not a complete free-for-all, but we do have some quite strict house rules, but people are following them, which is fantastic. And we have people just asking questions, things like what's happening to your stock right now, and people can comment on that, reply, like those posts. And like I mentioned before, this is exactly what the community is for. It's for people to share ideas and ask questions and get answers from their peers. And we have sections, if you're a bartender, you can join, a pub worker. If you're a freelancer, there's not a massive amount of support out there for freelancers. And I think that is a really important part of what we're doing with the community as well, and just making sure everyone is supported. And then we also have a section on wellness tips from within the industry, education, and if anyone's doing any fundraising for us, they can post in there and make that more aware. And then finally, we also have our industry group section. And this is where I am in the process of recruiting organisations who are complementary to the community to help provide some resources. So people like Healthy Hospo, if people are particularly looking for wellbeing content, they can go in here because they know who Healthy Hospo are. And Tim, who is head of Healthy Hospo, has been posting some really fantastic resources for people. So how to sleep when you work in hospitality, top 5 tips for returning to work. And we've got the WSTA in there and the WSET as well. And that's going to be growing quite largely over the next few months. I'm in the process of building those groups in there. So if anyone is watching and they know of anyone, please do get in touch. That'd be fantastic. There's also the option for people to chat to each other. So there's a little discussion box here. So you can, when you sign up with your profile, you can say whether you want people to be able to contact you or not. If you're happy for them to, people can find you as a member and start chatting to you, which has been fantastic in this community, because we have so many people in here who are really young in the industry or completely new to it, and they don't know where to go to get support from people in the industry. So this is a really great place for them, that's a bit maybe less scary than LinkedIn, but a bit more formal than Facebook Messenger, and they can just get in touch with them. And we've had that's been used far more than we thought it would be used, which is really, really great. And at the moment, we've got about 1,000 people using the drinks community. We're hoping for about 5,000 by the end of the year. So we're getting there. But it's basically a space where anyone can join as an individual, whole teams can join, but it's for individuals to use as a place where they can come and chat and grow as a worker, and also personally as well. So anyone watching, if you want to let your team know about this, please do. And then just a couple of other things that we are also working on with the community. We launched our mentoring program at the beginning of the year, and we're using something called the GROW model, which is quite a popular model that people use for coaching and mentoring. So GROW is based on goal, current reality for R, options or obstacles for O, and then will for W. And we had so many people signing up for this. In the end, about 30 mentors and 30 mentees were matched up based on what the mentees' needs were and what the mentor's skill set was. They're in the process of going through the GROW model at the moment, and we are gearing up to go into our second round of the mentoring program. So again, if you go to the drinks community on here, when you sign up, there's a section in there that has the mentorship application form, so you can apply really easily in there. And we're hoping to run these probably 2 or 3 times a year. So there's no, if you can't do it now, there'll be an opportunity later on in the year to do it as well. And that's something that we're going to be building into the drinks community platform as well. So there'll be a space for all mentors and all mentees in there. And that's the drinks community.
Wow, great. Thank you, Millie. It's a really professional and sleek looking tool. And there's some sections in there that even I wasn't aware of. So that's brilliant. One question is, you know, the drinks community TV section with the,
yes.
So do you have to access that through the platform, do you? That's the only way to access?
Yep. So at the moment, what we're doing is announcing any forums that we're doing on the community, but also on social media. So people can sign up without joining the community and watch it without joining the community. But we would advise people to join the community, because that's where we're going to be putting the recorded versions on there. So anyone who does miss it, they can go on and watch it on demand as well. So all of those forums and all of those webinars will be saved in the community for people to watch whenever they would like to. So it's a really good resource to have in there, because it just has, it's going to, by the end of the year, hopefully have sort of 10 or 12 different forums in there across all the different topics that we would like to discuss, depending on what happens with the industry this year.
Great, thank you. So I have got a question here from Andy Newman here, who says, "Hi Millie, as a freelance licensing consultant, ex-chair of Hackney Licensing Enforcement Authorities and ex-police inspector, is the drinks community an appropriate place for me?"
It is indeed. So as I mentioned, we are really keen to have freelancers using the space, and whether that's from someone who's coming in as a freelance journalist or a freelance PR, or someone in your position or who's worked in those positions before within the industry, it's a space that you can come and impart any knowledge and ask questions as well. So yeah, we're definitely keen to have, we would be really keen to have you within the community if you think you would find it helpful. And as much as it's about people going in to access help and knowledge, it's also a place where people can impart their experience as well. So I think it works really nicely both ways.
Great. Okay. I've got another question. Actually, this is Carl Phillips could have taken the words out of my mouth, because this is the something I was going to ask you myself. So Carl's message is, as a local authority manager, I'm keen to promote where our licensed trade can obtain advice and support. I routinely email our trade on the hot topics that currently face the hospitality sector. I will include your contact details on the newsletter that I send out. And I think he means both you, the licensed trade charity, and the Drinks Trust. I'm sure many, oh, sorry, I think I might have broken up a bit there. So I hope everybody got the gist of what I was saying, but I'm sure many leading pub companies know of your existence, but how many small independent pub owners know you are out there? Providing your details will hopefully give them a nudge as to your existence. So if I say, I think some of the people that will be on this call might actually be in a similar position where they don't run a premises themselves, but they are licensing professionals that support a huge group of premises. So actually, while we have a small number of people on, the potential in terms of getting your message out there is huge. And I wonder whether it would be useful for us as Institute of Licensing and Best Bar None. I can't speak for the other bodies, but perhaps what we could do is we could put together a bit of a summary and some links and some contact details around what you provide and how to access those things, and then send them out so that they can then cascade it out to their licensed premises, because that I think would give some really good support to the premises and a way for people to get in contact with you without them having to go and sort of and craft something themselves. So could we work together to do something like that? Would that be good?
Yeah, fab.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
And Carl, if you're not on my distribution list for Best Bar None, if you email me, so I'm sylvia.oates, OATES @bestbarnone.com, but I'll put my email in the comments. And then, I don't know if anybody else is interested, but we could put something together. I'll send it out to our Best Bar None coordinators and our newsletter. And I'll also speak to the other organisations that we're involved with to see if they'd be interested in disseminating that to their members as well, to get that. Oh yeah, thanks, Sylvia. That's definitely the right way forward, says Carl Phillips. Well, I'm glad you think so, Carl. That's great. And Andy Newman too. Great. I'll put my email in the comments.
Homepage. Sorry, on our homepage, we've got like this 2-minute film, which summarizes what we do. We made it short because I think this is where people were working, and you don't have that long to sort of like research all of our website. So yes, there's another one that I can WeTransfer on that is 6 minutes long, and that's more aimed at pub owners, general managers, supervisors who just their team, and 6 minutes long is really not, and it's sort of wanted to think about a bit more by the end of available.
Great. Sorry, I think my internet connection is going a bit crazy. So yes, I think what I've learned from working with regulators and licensing officers and business improvement districts and those kind of people that support large groups of licensed premises is if we can kind of aggregate the information, put the links together and maybe put something like a piece of communication together, that would work really well. So I'm excited about that. That's great. And we'll also put some extra links on our All Hands to the Pump website, which is just a kind of aggregating website that brings together lots of free resources and information for the trade. So excellent. So does anybody else have any? I have another Q&A coming up. Oh no, that's that one's done. Okay, does anybody have any other questions for our panelists? No. Well, I do have a question for you both. So I guess one of the things at the moment is people are looking very short term at what the immediate concerns are, and I really get that. And of course, that's absolutely the right approach, because there are a lot of very pressing and immediate and significant challenges that staff and licensed premises are facing. However, taking a step back and looking forward and sort of opening your mind up slightly, what do you think are going to be the kind of the big hot topics going forward, and what kind of preparation do you think people can be doing for those topics coming up? So I'll ask Millie first.
Yeah, it's really interesting you should ask that question, because I've been thinking about that a lot for a couple of pieces that I'm writing for a couple of trade mags. And I think one of the biggest things that people are talking about at the moment is talking about the industry as a grassroots industry, and how we look at the industry when it comes to as Jamie was saying, a career, and making it clearer to the powers that be, but also people who work at the beginning of people's careers, so career officers or at universities, just teaching people about the industry and how it's a fantastic place to build a career. And I think in the long term, I mean, that's an absolutely huge ask, especially after the last 12 months and a lot of the bad feeling in hospitality around how it's been treated within the coronavirus pandemic. But I think that will help tackle one of the biggest issues that I have been talking about within my job for the last 10 years, which is retention of staff. And I think retention of staff has always been dealt with by making sure that you've got fantastic training and education in-house, which I think is still hugely pertinent. But I do think that there needs to be a step looking even further back at when people get into the industry and just instilling that it's a place they can stay for a long period of time, and it isn't just something that you do and then you just drop whenever you fancy it to go and do something else, or if another opportunity comes up. So I think that's going to be a really big issue. And with Brexit as well, you know, we need more sort of local talent to pick up all those amazing people who unfortunately have had to go home either because of COVID or because of Brexit. So I think building that talent within our own country, which is there, is something that's going to be a huge topic this year and moving forward.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I think that I've got a couple of points on that. One is, it strikes me that you know, some of the more, or some of the career progression opportunities that exist in our industry, to successfully do that role, you have to have actually worked behind the bar. You have to have done, you know what you're talking about. You have to have had that experience. So I think it's a really valid point to make, that actually to get through the hospitality industry and to build a career in the hospitality industry, it's almost essential to start at the start, isn't it? So it's not, it's a really good use of time to spend time behind the bar and to get to know the operation, to be able to do those effectively those more senior roles. So
definitely
sort of making that point early is good.
And I think also there's a lot to be said, again, just through some of the things that I've been running industry up to a wider range of people as well. You know, doing things like a CT course is extremely expensive, and just making for people who maybe aren't able to pay for that education to still have access to it. And I think the more that we open up the opportunities to be specialised in this industry, it's only going to serve us better in the long run, and just make where we work a far more diverse place as well.
Yeah. Carolyn, do you have anything to say on that topic?
I think I'd reiterate, I get really cross when, you know, like, because my son's in the pub industry and really loves it, and then someone says, so a stopgap job. You know, I don't think people, they totally underestimate transferable skills in hospitality have in the industry. It's manual cooking, hygiene. Young people get into management positions so much quicker. I think sometimes a uni route, I'm not, you know, doing a uni route, but a lot. That would probably be hard to, I think, for someone who loves people, loves rugby, loves the buzz of it, and also I think it has a really nice family. That, you know, that what I've learned from the mental health sessions, you know, it's a great industry to be in, and what we need to do is keep that well-being issue on the front burner, and don't just think, oh, COVID's over now, that's it, I can tick that box, because there's always going to be things that are going to get people down, and it may be that they're going to lose their accommodation, or they're going to have a bit of debt. And what you want to do is try and keep those guys that you want to keep long time, because, you know, they're going to be a real value to you and your customers and your business. So I agree. I think, you know, there are so many free resources now for the hospitality sector. I think they were a bit few and far between now. And I love my job. I just think, you know, the hospitality sector is a great place to be, and it's so varied. You know, I don't think you'd ever get the word bored. when you work in hospitality.
There's no time to be bored.
And you have no time to be bored. And again, it's like Jamie was saying, people are going, their feet are going to really hurt, and their backs and stuff like that. So just be mindful that, you know, it's been a while out of the section. Come back in. I know that's short term, but there's so much more that you can learn and progress in the industry. And us too, you know, our organisations have been around for a long time and are going to be around for a long time yet to come. Just get people to come and talk to us if they've got any worries. We might also sort of be a retention tool as well as, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and we're quite free. So that's my tips.
Yeah, I think I made the point earlier about, or made the link as you did, that, you know, you're a bit like a free resource for sort of well-being, as are the Drinks Trust, but also, I suppose, in terms of career progression, which we saw from Jamie's presentation, was a really career support and flagging opportunities. Obviously, the drinks community is going to be great for that, isn't it? And it's just an easy and free way to sort of engage your staff and to offer them something else and another reason to stay and help with retention.
Exactly.
Brilliant. I think another thing that's really interesting is I do feel at the beginning of the pandemic, I think a lot of people had a bit of a concern that because hospitality was closed and it was quite obvious that it was, you know, the sociable sector, surprise, surprise, didn't really gel with the whole COVID pandemic and therefore had to close. I think there was a bit of a concern about ongoing job viability and the sector being seen as a ongoing, you know, sort of concern and a valuable and viable career opportunity. But I actually think there's that countered that, and I'd be interested to hear what you think. But in counter to that, I think it also brought some really amazing operators to the front who you know, were sort of talking about the plight of the industry and what they were doing to diversify, and were really inspirational. And I think that actually did us some really good PR in terms of careers in hospitality, because it showed that you get some excellent, really great, talented, and like I say, inspirational individuals. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people that I've spoken to about the subject of the hospitality industry as a career have said, I think, you know, obviously we prefer not to have been on the front of the newspapers or, you know, been talked about at PMQs, but the fact that it was being spoken about on pretty much a daily basis, I think has really shown people that people who work in the industry are really creative and dynamic, and these fantastic businesses who have gone around the clock to make their businesses work. And also just seeing people out at the pub when they opened, I don't think people really realized how much the pub meant to their community, maybe before COVID happened. And I think, you know, it's obviously not the way that you want it to happen, but I do think the last 12 months have been a fantastic opportunity for the industry to just show how amazingly creative and innovative it is, more than ever before, certainly in the last 10 years.
And not only that, community minded, you know, out of all of the industries that you saw, the people that fed the homeless, fed the NHS, put up people in hotels, were the hospitality industry within days of the COVID. So that just shows, right, how thinking on their feet they are, because they can get stuff up and running because they're used to doing that all the time anyway, because you sort of have a, you know, a migrating audience depending on what time of year it is. So it just showed how good they were at it. So it made me really proud of the hospitality industry, actually.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely. And we have had a question that's related, actually, which I'll throw to you both. So it's from Andy Newman. It says, given the array of skills, resilience and experiences learned in hospitality, let alone opportunities, why is it that hospitality is so underrated? And I'll throw that to Millie first, if I can.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to say about the amount that people in hospitality get paid, and also how those systems are set up as well, you know, 0-hour contracts, cash in hand. I know when I first started working in hospitality, it was very kind of, you know, under the bar, cash in hand, maybe not as regulated as it could have been back then. But I think there's also a lot to be said about how it's in our culture. I don't think specifically in the UK, working in hospitality is seen as something to necessarily be proud of. And I think, like what Carolyn said earlier, when I worked in a pub, I remember people saying, when are you going to get a proper job? And I think that's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my entire life. And, you know, it was a proper job and I absolutely loved it. So I think there's a culture in the UK where we don't value hospitality or the people who work there, because it is seen as a stopgap job you do out of uni or in the summer holidays. And I think that culture really, that needs to change before we can see any change in that perception.
I also think, because we've been going a long time, that the old, if I'm going to say like a generational thing, which is not happening so much anymore, probably the old style licensees didn't care about their staff, if I'm being really honest. And we've been at road shows, and this always makes me laugh because I seem like a friendly stalker, but we speak to licensees and say, like, we're a charity, and they said, like, oh, I haven't got any money to give. No, we give money away, and I'm almost like chasing them down the corridor to say, it's the reverse. And we care about the mental well. Oh, well, you know, the staff will tell me if they're not happy. And that came out a lot. It was almost like we did our own internal survey without doing a survey. That has really changed now. That the people that are going into buying the pubs that have worked for the corporates and then start out on their own now really know that well-being is at the core, and involving your staff at decision levels, even if they're small ones, because they buy into working for you a lot longer, and and they'll have some great ideas that, you know, haven't probably been asked of them before. So I think that mentality is making people actually think very seriously about working in hospitality, whereas they probably didn't before. Because I'm sure Millie's the same. I've worked in hospitality, you know, and I'm a much older person than Millie, is that you weren't really involved in the decision making. You just did your shift and then you got your pay packet and you went home. Whereas now I think it's really different. Hence, people of much younger age going into management are much earlier on. So that needs to be told more by actually the pub owners as well, to their peer group, about what a lovely industry it is. And I think if we can get that sea change to happen, it will be a career that everyone will be proud of, and not just that stopgap thing that annoys me immensely.
Same. And also, just another thing I think that's worth mentioning is that I think the way that we work now, especially over the last 12 months, has changed so much. People have had to be really dynamic and innovative. And, you know, I know bartenders who also run the social media channels for brands. You know, they have all these other, they have the ability to do all these other things within their role. So I think working behind a bar or being a bartender, depending on where you work, has so many more opportunities to it now than it did before. You can be part of the social media strategy, you can help with marketing if that's something you're interested in, and people are willing to invest in you to do that and be, you know, a representative for a brand. I think there's just so many more strings to people's bows now when it's in hospitality, and I think the longer that happens, people will realize that more often, and hopefully over time they'll see hospitality as, you know, one of the most rounded jobs that you can have, and those transferable skills, you know, they're priceless.
Great, thank you. I have another question from Carl. He says, perhaps I'm wrong, but many licensees seem to struggle in obtaining good legal advice, particularly when it comes to completing applications. Whilst licensing officers should be doing their utmost to help applicants, many licensees find the process complex and often get it wrong. Do your organisations offer advice? Legal advice out there is often very costly. So Millie, again, I'll ask you, does the Drinks Trust offer
I don't think we offer legal advice as such, but I do know a few lawyers who I've actually been in touch with over the years for people to go in touch with, and they specialize in the hospitality industry and are very much aware of, you know, some advice they're happy to give away for a lot less than maybe another type of lawyer. So I'm happy to, when we put that document together, mention a few of those people in there. But yeah, I don't know if Carolyn, the LTC, have more on that.
We don't do specialist legal advice for businesses because it is a really complex area, depending whether you have like a freehold, you know, free of tie. I'm going to big up another organisation. I know you guys are really sort of are great, but I would have said the BII is probably the best one. They've got about 10 helplines now, where we can't do stuff because we're more the personal lives of people that are working, you know, what's personally affecting them, their mental health and things. Whereas the BII have really listened to the very comments that Carl was making about there isn't, you know, and people going into pubs when they shouldn't do because they really don't know all the facts. Or if it's going a bit wrong, they don't speak to their area manager or the pub code. They can then just speak to the BII in confidence. And then really nice and straight talking. They know their stuff. about 125 quid a year. It's nothing. It really isn't. So I promise you, I'm not on any commission. I won't get anything from this. I might get a pint from them, but that'd be about it. Is that they are really good at all of that, and they know their stuff inside out.
Yes, I was about to suggest the same. The BII have got their helpline. As you say, to be a member is £100 and something a year, very good value. Yeah. They also, when it comes to things like reopening through COVID, the BII, the BBPA and UK Hospitality have worked together on what their FAQs document, haven't they, which has been just the Bible for so many people. They continue updating it, but the link stays the same. So every time you access the link, it will be the very latest information based on government guidance, and they have the ear of, so they sit with BAYs and those groups that are making the decisions to clarify, well, what exactly do you mean by outdoor space, and is it the same as the smoking regulations or whatever else? So they do a lot of work on that. Another option which we can put on the email that we send out is the All Hands to the Pump website has got a contact us page, and where it might be a very specific question about licensing or regulations, if licensees ask through that, we have a licensing solicitor on the Best One board and other licensing professionals that we're in touch with. Obviously the Institute of Licensing have helped to do these seminars, so we're happy to answer some of those sort of those questions around licensing law and regulations, because we know, we appreciate that licensees want to get it right, but actually with things changing so regularly, and as you say, the expense of a licensing solicitor, when it might just simply be a very quick question that they want to check, we're happy to help with that too. So we'll add that onto the communication that we all send out, because it all helps. Excellent. Well, I think that's all. Oh, hang on a minute, there's another Q&A. Let's see. Whilst not a lawyer, ex-licensing authority people and ex-police like me, member of BII and IOL, etc., offer competitively priced sound professional advice and help. You could probably also do so, Carl, as long as it isn't in your own area. I think he's endorsing the membership of the BII and the IOL there, which is great. Okay.
I don't know if they're still doing it, but they actually gave a lot of their services free during lockdown, because they just realised that people may not even have the money for their membership fee. So that might still be available if you sneak on. Yes,
that's the other thing, is to check the BII, the BBPA and the UK Hospitality websites, because as you say, where before there was a member login aspect to any information on their site, they've made a lot of their resources free of charge and easily access, haven't they, free to access. So that's brilliant. Things like there's COVID risk assessment templates and all sorts of things on the trade association website. So it's definitely worth looking at those. And again, I sound like I'm promoting the website that we've done, but we've tried to use that as an aggregating kind of resource for things like, when you're reopening, all your risk assessments, what guidance and advice is there from professional outfits that can help you to do that for free of charge, because everybody's purse strings are understandably very stretched at the moment. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for a really informative, interesting and engaging session. I'm going to stop the recording now, but thank you so much for all your time and input, and we'll put this